Act 3, Scene 1. By Scene 1, I mean Scene 3. Anyway, Romeo, immediately after he kills Tybalt, Benvolio says, "You gotta leave," so he runs away, and he runs right to Friar Lawrence's house. Friar welcomes in and says, "You're wedded to calamity. You're married to disaster now." Romeo at this point doesn't know what Friar said, or what the prince said for that matter. And so he said, "What is the prince's news?" He's expecting saying that you're going to get killed. Friar says, "I know exactly what's going on." Okay? And this is what the prince said. Romeo said, "What could it be? There couldn't be anything worse than death." And Friar says, "Actually, things are a lot better than death. You don't have to die, you just have to leave. You're banished." Romeo laughs at that, and he says, "Be merciful. It would be better if you said death. Because if it was death, then I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. Banished, I know that I have to go away, and I have to, not only that, but once I'm away, I have to think about how much I wish I was still with Juliet." Friar says, "Be patient. Okay? There's a lot of places to go. You could go, there's a lot of cities to go in the world. You just have to leave this particular one city." If you remember back to the beginning of the play when Romeo was talking about missing Rosalind, and he was doing all the crazy comparisons about how he's like a crazy person locked up in a prison and he's whipped and tormented and all that stuff, he kind of slides back into that now. And he said, it's like hell. It's like torture. It's like death itself, but worse. Okay, and calling death banished is worse than that. And the next comparison is really over the top. If you think about someone getting beheaded, like that, if the blade doesn't go all the way through, I don't know how many of you have ever like chopped wood, but when you're chopping wood, if the axe doesn't go all the way through the log, you kind of got to put your foot on it, pry it out, and then do it again. So he said, it's like getting your head cut off and being happy that the blade went all the way through, which is a good thing, but it's still not, you're still dead. Friar Lawrence said, "Oh, rude unthankfulness, you should be thrilled with this judgment." He said, "Everything that happened, the prince basically went back on his word. His original word is anyone caught fighting is going to die. And now he said, all you have to do is leave." Romeo goes over the top again, and we're around line 30. He says, "Torture. This is heaven. Verona, right here is heaven. Because everything can look at her. Dogs and cats and mice, everything can look at her, but I can't." He then continues on and he compares himself to carrion flies. Carrion flies are the flies that feed on dead animals. He's like, those have more honor than I do. Because at least they can look at Juliet. I can't even look at her. If she's blushing, they can see that. I can't even do that. So then he said, exile is worse than death. Now, Romeo gives a little bit of foreshadowing in this line that's around line 44. And he said, "Don't you have any poison mixed or sharp ground knife? No quick, easy way of ending my life? Banished to kill me." And he said, "That's worse." Then he ends this long, annoying, whiny speech by saying, "Look, you're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to be my confessor. You're supposed to absolve my sins. You're supposed to help me. And then you mangle me with that word banished?" Friar Lawrence said, Listen, crazy little boy. Time to listen to me." And Romeo says, "I'm not going to listen because you're just going to talk about banishing me again." Friar says, "I'm going to give you some philosophy, some ideas to help you with that." Romeo said, "Look, forget your ideas, okay? I don't want to hear about them. Unless somehow you can make Juliet here, make a new town where we can both be, talk the prince out of whatever it is kicking me out of the town, then if you can't do those things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help me, so I don't want to hear about it." Friar Lawrence says, "I see crazy people don't have ears." And Romeo quickly responds back, "Why should they when smart people like you don't have eyes to see what's going on right in front of them?" Romeo said, "There's no way," and this is a very typical teenager feeling, I think. I think every teenager since the beginning of time has felt this when they're talking to an adult. You don't know how I feel at all. And he said, if you were as young as me, if you had just married Juliet, if it just an hour ago, if you'd killed Tybalt, and then you got banished, then you might talk to me. Because what you would be doing then is you'd be down on the ground rolling around and crying just like I do, pulling their hair out. I wouldn't do that because I've got kind of a shortage in that area as it is. But then you'd fall on the ground and you take measure of yourself for how big your grave's going to have to be when you die. Now, at this point, the nurse knocks on the door. They don't know it's the nurse. All they hear is someone knocking. So the danger is if it's someone other than the nurse, if it's just some person in the town, and they find Romeo there, they kill him. So Friar's at least trying to get Romeo to shut up and hide, so that if someone does come, they're not going to find him. Romeo just keeps lying down on the ground crying. No, they keep knocking. He keeps yelling at Romeo to run away and move, but he won't. He just lays there. Then the nurse says, let me know when you let me come in and you should know my errand. Okay, so it's the nurse. She comes in and asks, where's Romeo? And Friar says, he's down laying on the ground. He's drunk on his own tears. The nurse says, that's basically just like what's going on with Julia. She's just laying there crying and crying and crying. And she says, kind of what a lot of people have been thinking, stand up if you're a man. Okay? If for Juliet's sake, you got to get up. You got to get yourself together. At this point, Romeo doesn't even know how Juliet feels about all this. I mean, she has every right to, he did just kill her cousin. She has every right to just say, forget you. Okay? I'm not married to you. No one's going to say that you're married to me other than you, and no one will believe you because our families are enemies. So she says, he says, what does she say if my concealed ladies say to our canceled love? The nurse says she doesn't say much of anything. She just cries and cries and cries. Sometimes she gets up in bed and she starts crying for Tybalt, and then she starts crying for Romeo, and then she falls down again and starts crying. At this point in the movie, Romeo freaks out, and he blames himself. And he thinks the fact that she's crying because, again, it's one of those instances where he doesn't listen. And he won't wait. Everything goes too quickly. They stumble that run fast. And he tries to. And he says, as if my name was shot from a gun at her. Now, he said, he asked the friar, tell me what part of me weighs my name. And this goes back to Juliet's speech on the balcony about what is in her name. And Romeo asked, where is that part of my name in my body so that I can sack that hateful mansion? And at this point, he runs and grabs a dagger and is about to stab himself in front of both the friar and the nurse before even hearing what either of them have to say.